Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Barbara Swift and you're watching BSwiftArt. In today's video, we're going to visit the ocean floor. We're going to paint with watercolor sea polyps, which are like little organisms that grow on the live rock, and they're really the flowers of the sea. It kind of looks like bouquets amongst all the different corals that are growing on the rocks. So the ones we're doing today, the little sea polyps, they almost remind me of a mushroom. And they come out during the day in the sunshine and they open up wide and they catch all the little nutrients in the water, and that's how they feed. And then at night they close up again and shrink back and wait till the morning to do it all over again. They're very interesting little creatures. We had them in our reef tank when we had that years ago, and they were really fun to watch, and they're so beautiful, all different colors. So I hope you enjoy this video. We're going to do a couple of different techniques. I'm going to use acrylic markers on top of watercolor, but then we're going to go back and do watercolor on top of the marker. So stay tuned to the end to see how that turns out. So here I'm just going to start by just putting some water on my watercolor paper. I'm leaving some areas dry. And I'm going to spray with my spray ink and just let the water kind of take it where it wants to go. And I'm looking at the patterns of the spray. Some of them look like little starbursts, which I really like. So I'm going to take some water on my big quill here and just kind of move it around a little bit in the parts that I don't like, and then try to stay away from the parts that I do like. So this is going to be very wet on wet technique. I'm going to end up covering the whole page with color. So I'm just using some watery colors. I'm using purple and blues, and then you can see when I mix that purple, which is actually violet red, in with this blue, it makes a darker purple. So I'm letting the paint mix and mingle, letting the inks mix and mingle with each other and make up their own colors. So oftentimes I don't mix colors on my palette. I'll mix them right on my paper. I think that it's more true color that way. It doesn't muddy up as much. So that's why I do it that way. But sometimes I do mix on my palette. Depends what I'm doing. But right now I'm just trying to think about those sea polyps and different colors that they would be. And I'm adding some yellow, and then the yellow is mixing with the blue and making a green. And just dabbing it on. Just here and there. I'm not really thinking about making a object yet. This is just color. Just putting some color in there. In some places it's darker, more intense. And I let the water just kind of move it around. I'm lifting up my pad here to kind of coax that. I'm going to come back now with another spray ink. This one's the magenta. And just see what that's going to do and how it mixes with the colors underneath. This is still wet on wet. The paper's very wet. And I'm just going to move it around in some of the places and blot up some of the water there with my quill. Put some salt on there, because then whenever I put the salt and the salt starts to dissolve and absorb the moisture, it'll move the paint away from the salt, and then we get a crystallized effect. And I'm also going to just drop some little splatters of just plain water on here, and that'll disperse the water, the paint away from the water droplets. And that gives an interesting look. I'm just getting some texture and some color on my paper, and just fun, easy. Don't think too hard about it. Just put it down, because we're going to draw on top of this, and then we're going to come back and paint on top of this. So I decided to put in a few splatters of some purple and let that all mix together. And see how it's softening out those splatters? That's because there's so much water on the page. So it's wet on wet. So the pigment will go wherever the water is. and that'll soften it all out. And I'll just move it around just a little bit here. You begin to see what the water droplets did there. So here it is. It's all dry now. And I've gone ahead and brushed off all my salt just with my fingertips. Brushed over the paper and swept it all off. So now I have all kinds of interesting marks in there. That's really exciting. Those are my Posca markers. So these are acrylic paint in a marker form. And I really like to draw with these. You got to be careful because they stay wet for just a little while. So you don't want to drag your hand into them. But they're really easy because you can just draw. Instead of using a fine paintbrush, you could do that too. I'm just using acrylic paint, or you could use gouache to do the same kind of effect. So I'm just kind of looking at my little shapes that the watercolor has made and the salt, and I'm just trying to find some uneven shapes for my sea polyps. They're kind of wavy. And I'm going to go ahead and draw in these lines, kind of doing them in a pie shape because the center is smaller and the outside is larger. So they're like a pie shape. And I like to keep them pretty close together. And then after I'm done, I'm just outlining my little center here. And that'll clean up those edges where the end of those stripes are. And I'm going to beef it up just a little bit around the edges. Just make that a little bit more solid of a line. I'm not going for realism as usual. I'm just kind of going for the effect. So, you know, my sea polyps didn't look exactly like this, but this resembles it. And I'm going to put one over here that's maybe underneath this one. So this would be a different variety. My ones I had in my tank were like a cluster, all of the same. You could do that too. But I'm not using a really large paper, so I'm going ahead and making them all just a little bit different. This is really relaxing, just to kind of doodle and paint with these paint pens. So I'm kind of looking here because you really can't see this light blue that I'm using too much. But that's okay because I'm going to go back over it with watercolor and I will tint those blue lines in some areas. And I'm thinking right about there I'm going to start another shape. So I stopped. I'll put some little dots in there. And I'm putting the dots uneven, kind of scattering them in there so they're not all lined up in a row. But you could do that too if you wanted to. It's all up to you. And I outlined my inner circle there with the blue. And I'm going to stick another one right about here. And the center might be right about there. I like to make them kind of offset. And these markers come in all different millimeters, from super, super fine to really big, bold lines. So when you buy them, I bought this set just at Walmart, which I was super surprised to see. I used to have to go to the art store to get them. But they're online now on, Amazon, and the, different art supply stores have them. I like them because they come in the different thicknesses and also a lot of different colors. So this is acrylic paint in these markers, so it covers up anything that's underneath it. So I'm putting these little dots right on top of those purple lines, but the purple lines won't show through. So if you had done this with watercolor, your lines would show through the dots. So that's why we're using the acrylic. And I kind of sketched out just a little shape here. And I'm going to try, this isn't a new marker for me, but I got the gold one. And I wanted to see how shimmery or how metallic it is. And it's got a nice little shimmer, but I wouldn't say it's metallic like chrome or, polished gold. It's very soft. So it'd be pretty for a lot of different effects. So I'm going in here and I'm making all these little circles with a solid circle in the center. And I'm going to go around the perimeter of my little polyp. Now I don't think sea polyps are having this pattern. This is just kind of something for fun. I liked that starburst of that pink ink there in the middle. And I'm hoping that'll kind of shine through my center design. And now I'm just making some circles with the little solid circle in the middle, just kind of random. See that? You can't see it really dark right now, but you will after we get that watercolor. Here, I'll pull it up close so you can see it. Also, my lights are very bright, so it's kind of washing it out just a bit, but... And now I'm going back in with this pale green and I'm making kind of waves, wavy little lines. And they'll go right through those dots. There, you can see it a little better there. And now I'm going to try a new design in the center where I'm doing just this little kind of marquise shape lines, and I'm just going to tuck them in wherever they can fit in there. Kind of looks a little bit like a dahlia or something. And then I always like to add little dots on the ends of things. Even when I do lettering or anything, I always like to put little dots. It gives you an opportunity to make it look even. So sometimes you might put the dot closer in, or you might put it a little farther out, depending on how you're trying to line it up with what's next to it. And I kind of like that little marquee shape, so I thought, well, I'm going to put those just kind of here and there in this big one in the corner. So I'm just drawing that little shape and then putting a solid one in the center. Like I said, you can do whatever pattern you like. It's just having fun. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of those wavy lines. So I went first and did the line from the top and the bottom of that little marquise shape, and then I filled in lines in between. And I'll put my little dots on there too. The dots are very forgiving. Just make sure that they're solid. Sometimes when you do that little squiggly circle like that, ends up being hollow in the middle. So go back and check, make sure that they got filled in if you're doing this design. And I'm just going to create a little second line around the outside so I can fill it in. Excuse me, had a little sneeze there. Yeah, I just drew the borders and then come back and fill it in. Make it a little bit more bold. And here's a little kind of seashell shape. I just kind of saw that space there and thought, well, that looks kind of shell shaped, so like a scallop. And I kind of messed up with my marker right there, so guess what? We're going to do some dots. I'm doing this on the rough watercolor paper, which, if you did hot press where it's nice and smooth, that might be easier to draw on, because sometimes that texture in the rough kind of grabs hold of your pen tip and takes it down the rut with it, so it does its own thing. And I went ahead and did a little white one there, kind of like we did before, so I didn't show you all the details of that because this could get very long since it took me a couple days to do the whole thing in real time, so this is speeded up a bit. So I'm going to put some little pink polka dots around the outside and some near the center. I'm just filling them in. And I'm trying to not line them up like little soldiers. I'm trying to make them more random. Some a little thicker and some a little more thin around the edges. And I really like what the salt did there on that one side, and I can't decide if I'm going to continue around or am I going to try to make something out of those little, I don't know, they kind of look like little fingers. So I'll think about that. So right now I thought, well, I'm going to do some of these little branches. Some little C branches. So these are fun to do. The only trick is you want to keep them in a V shape. So if you think about that when you're drawing the little branches off the side and everything makes a V, then it'll be more fluidity it have. Little fluidity. I'm just doing a dot on the top and then I'm kind of making a teardrop and bringing it down onto the branch. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I was thinking, oh, those dots are very pale, so I'm going to go back and just put a little dab of purple in the middle of each dot. So they'll show up a little better. And since I did that, why not put some pink ones on the purple? There's so many things in nature, especially in the ocean, that we have no clue about, that it's a great possibility there might be something under there that looks just like that. Nobody's going to try to prove you wrong, I don't think. Oh, gotta get some more paint going. And for these, it's kind of like a tip that you pump it. And when you pump it, the paint goes down into the nylon tip. So the tip on these pens is hard, which I really like for drawing. I do have brush markers too. I use that more for like lettering or things that you want, to have that thick and thin line to it, kind of like calligraphy. So I'm just doing a bold line in the center and then a thinner one, and then I'm connecting them with little short lines. Trying to think, what should I do here? Might as well add some lines to kind of go with the center, what I did there. So that's something different. We'll try that. So again, I'm going in kind of pie shapes. Kind of reminds me of a sea urchin. So I'm going to go ahead and put some circles in between. So they're going to be graduating from small to large. And I'm using the silver metallic pen. And again, it's not really super shiny, it's just more shimmery. So I'm going to kind of make it more bold so it shows up a little better. Yeah, come back around it again with a little bit of white, outline it, put a little bit of blue in the center. Thinking sea urchin. And anywhere that I kind of run into something like these blue lines and my white circles are going on top of those, if you wanted to, you can always come back and just paint those blue lines on again, or I should say draw, and just kind of thicken them up. And over here, I'm thinking, what could I tuck into there? Maybe just one that's just kind of peeking through. So it's really fun with the whites, is when we come back with the watercolor, the white is what's going to change the most. So I'm thinking kind of maybe more one that's just rings. And put some circles inside of the two lines. You want to try to be as precise as you can, but if you make a little mistake here or there, it won't show. There's so much going on, so much little details, and your eye won't be drawn to it. So we're just gonna kind of do some little wavy pattern in here. And put some more circles in the center. Kind of make another little imperfect shape around this side here. And my center can go right about there. And I'll make a thick line for this one also. I don't have all the size of the markers, but if I had the bigger marker, I would definitely get the bigger marker and do those lines. And these ones, I'm going to see how close together I can get them. So I kind of like that effect where it almost looks solid towards the center and then looser towards the outside. And I'll draw another one here, and I'm going to bring that gold in because I have the gold in two spots here, but I like to do things in 3s or 5s or 7s, so at least another spot where the gold will be. And I'll bring it up a little closer for you so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going ahead with those marquee shapes again, almost like a flower. And then I'm going to build it out. So I'm doing the whole thing this way. And then wherever, there's a little curve where a top and a bottom meet, that could be the center of the marquee. So just kind of drawing them in there like that. They don't become a set exact pattern. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Some are a little bit more sideways. So here we go. Let's bring in the watercolor. So I'm starting on this one with the white so you can see what it does. And I'm bringing in some of the blue. And it's actually going to tint the white acrylic. So the acrylic's kind of porous and it soaks into there. And of course it's also soaking into the watercolor paper underneath the lines. And I'm just taking some clean water and softening that edges. I want it to just kind of look like a glow, very soft. And I came back in and dabbed in just a little bit more color there and let that dry. And now over here where those pale blue lines are, I want to deepen that up too. Bringing in a little bit of the yellow, so the yellow on the blue is going to make a green. And then just water to soften it. And down on this one, I'm doing the same thing around the center. Bring in some of that purple. And you can see by doing this, it makes these kind of stand out a little bit more, especially against that pale background. Most likely I'm going to deepen that background up, and that'll make them pop even more. And then it'll look cool because the centers that I didn't do any drawing in will be the original color of the background, and it'll look like we painted something in there specifically. And I'm thinking, should I put a little bit in those stripes? Let me just drop in a little bit while it's nice and wet. Just drop in some more intense color there. And I like that soft glow it's doing. So here's another opportunity with the white. And I can put a little bit of purple in there and then leave that bright white center. I'm gonna put some water in here. I'm thinking I need some more yellow. So I'm gonna just put a little bit of water and then add a little bit of yellow. And I think the yellow helps to bring out the gold that's in the acrylic pens. I'm kind of looking at the shape of the edge of my shell here, and I kind of want to complement that. And bring some water and just soften that out. Kind of push that paint back into towards the center a little bit. Just kind of even out that water so that it doesn't make a line in there or a bleed. And I'm just going to go to this one next. So that was just water. And now I'm going to come back with that red violet and really deepen up that center where those lines are closer together to really emphasize that depth there. You can see I'm kind of getting a little more bolder as I'm going along because I'm really liking the darker color. So I'm using like that skim milk consistency, so you can, it's very weak paint. There's more water in it than pigment. And this is just water. But now look at how that center just kind of glows. That's pretty. And here's my white, and I'm thinking I want some pink over here. There's not a lot of pink on this side of the painting. I'll put that rose madder. I don't want it too dark, so I'm just going to mop up some of it. And remember, it'll dry lighter. So I'm keeping it on the inside of that white line. And I'll let that dry. And then I'm going to move up to where I had all those gold little dots and circles around the dots. And I'm going to really deepen that up, but not the dots. I'm going to leave the dots light so that they stand out. I'll put some green in here. Go all the way around the edges. So you got to do it in little sections at a time and keeping that one edge always wet, the one that you're working from. You don't want to wet the whole outside on a big area and then come back with the paint, because most likely your water will dry before you get there. So You know, this is just a continuous, kind of like a continuous wash where you would start on one side and then just always remembering to keep that one leading edge always wet. You got to watch the rest of the paint. So I'm keeping this edge right here wet, but then I got to go back and blend. So I want to do that very quickly. And this is Viridian. That's the color I'm using. And I'm using my Mission Gold paints. Yeah, we're finishing it up over here. And as you can see, that really made that stand out against that pale background. So whenever you put something dark next to light, it pops it out. And I like how that turned out, so I'm going to do the same thing on this one here with my little pink dots. And I don't really want to cover up my pink dots, so I have to be picky about the color that I choose. So I just want to do something that's still lighter, not too dark, or it'll cover those up completely. So I'm going to go around that edge, and then I'm going to really blend that out. So now my little pink dots are going to be more of this purple. And I'll bring it right into the purple little vines here. And take my water and soften. Just follow along the edge. I was trying not to paint over my pink line, but I did here and there, so I'll go back and fix that. So I can draw right back over it and draw that pink line of the edge again. And I think I'll just kind of make that match the outside. Get my water. Just soften around the edge. Deepen it up a little bit. Okay. And then here we'll move on to the white one. It's just water. I'll bring in the blue, complement the blue on that kind of sea urchin looking one. And then I want it to be different from the one with the gold and that green Viridian in there. So I want to make sure they all stand out individually. Just soften it with my water. I think that looks pretty cool. So now where this blue paint is, it's light blue, where the white stripes are. And then we got to do this big one here. So I'm going to use some of a darker purple because I have that purple in the seashell and then also in the one with the little viney things. So I want to bring that around throughout the painting. So now this one's a big one too, so I'm doing that continuous edge. Just making sure that everything is perfect before I go too far ahead of myself because it'll dry. And then if you come back with water on drier paint, it's going to make a bloom. And that is like a little edge where the water has pushed the paint away. And I don't want that in this. I want it to be very soft. So I'm being very careful about how much water and really, blending it out so that it's not a puddle of water. I'll put some plain water here, and I'm going to avoid that blue boulder stripe or circle. And this is a smaller area, so I'm going to go ahead and put all the water down. And then I'll come back with my paint, but it's not going to dry before I get to it, because it's smaller. So come back with some pink. I think I need a little bit bolder. There we go. Do a little bit bolder. That's the rose madder. Go around those edges. And I'm blending it out, working quickly. So you can see I'm keeping an eye on both sides of my line here because I don't want it to dry too fast before I get to blend it out. Well, there you go. So we could have left it with that pale border, but I did decide to come back with a little bit of cobalt blue. Just a light wash, and I put it all over, wet on wet. You still see some of those colors from the background popping through. And I did decide to, finish some of those edges that I was wondering if like the one with the fingers that's over on what's on the side there, which is at the top of the screen right now. I went ahead and finished that one. And now, like I said, you can always go over it and clean up anything with some more of the acrylic marker. So I'm coming back and I'm, defining some of those edges, cleaning up some spots that, maybe I didn't get it exactly how I wanted it. And then I got this stencil, which is really cool. So now I want to play with my stencil so it looks just like seaweed. So I got a toothbrush that I got wet, and I'm just kind of scrubbing it over just a little section at a time of my stencil. And just scrubbing it until I can see that paint is starting to lift off. Now blot it up with some toilet tissue here, and then bring up my stencil, and I'll have little seaweeds growing and also these little snail shells. I thought those were really cute. So I have a stencil with the snail shells, so I did the same technique. Just find a good little spot for it, scrub it with a wet toothbrush, and then blot up the extra paint. And then when you take the stencil up, blot the paper, the painting itself, so that that'll not make a mark where there's extra water because it leaks underneath a little bit. But that's why I decided to go with a darker background so that I could lift out some of the paint and make these little patterns. Just gives it another layer. So see there, I put all that little vegetation in the back, like it's growing amongst them. And there you have it. So I hope you like my painting. Thank you for staying to the end and seeing all my different little techniques. Push that button to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. So thank you. Be creative. Be happy. BSwiftArt.com. Peace and love be with you until we meet again. Thank you again. Bye-bye now.